In this month's iteration of the Gotei 13 series, we'll be taking a look at the Soul Society's shadowy 2nd Division, famous for their covert operations and stealthy assassinations. Led by Captain Soi Fon for the entirety of Bleach's present-day storyline, the 2nd Division is an interesting one. In my opinion, it heralds from much the same position as the 1st Division before it. They're both highly authoritarian divisions who strive to uphold the laws and the rules of Soul Society, punishing criminals wherever they see fit. However, unlike the 1st Division, the 2nd Division never undergoes that sense of seismic or dramatic change, and instead remains fairly static for its tenure in the Bleach story, although that doesn't mean it's any less interesting. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at the 2nd Division as a whole. We'll be doing a deep dive overview of the division, as well as a breakdown of some of its most important and prominent characters and figureheads, as well as looking at the 2nd Division's role in the universe and story of Bleach. Before we get started on this video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now, as you're in the perfect place for Bleach content like this every single week. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, as it really does help support me and the channel by getting the video more exposure on the YouTube algorithm and helping more Bleach fans like yourselves get a chance to see it. And if you want to take the support from me a little step further, if you really enjoy what I do here on the channel, we do also have a Patreon as well, where you can go and support me there. You can get videos like this one early, and you can support me there for as little as $1 a month. All the names up on screen right now are people doing just that. They're supporting me over there on Patreon, so a massive shout out and a huge thank you goes out to everybody who's helping me to do what I love. But looking at the 2nd Division specifically now, and from my time in the Bleach community, I think the 2nd Division has kind of emerged as one of the more popular among fans, and this probably has something to do with the fact that the 2nd Division is associated with some of Bleach's most popular characters ever, characters like Yoruichi Shihoin and Kisuke Urahara, as well as the current captain Soi Fon. But the popularity also has something to do, I assume, with the inherent badassery that comes with the division made up of mysterious ninja assassins, as that's effectively what the 2nd Division is all about. So then, to go to an overview of the division itself, much like the 1st Division before it, the 2nd Division has no real special jobs or duties to call its own, officially at least anyway, but of course we know better. The 2nd Division is intimately linked with a squad called the Onmitsukido, which is a branch of Soul Society that is not a part of the Gotei 13, but is instead governed directly by the Central 46. Now, the Onmitsukido is deserving of a video itself at some point in the future, but let's just go over what we need to know in regards to the 2nd Division. So the Onmitsukido is essentially an internal policing task force that kind of works in the shadows to root out traitors and criminals among the Shinigami itself. So in effect, if you're a part of the stealth force, the covert ops force, you are almost working against your fellow man behind the scenes as an arm of the Central 46 to ensure they maintain control over the inner workings of the Seirete. Now, as I mentioned, the Onmitsukido is not a part of the Gotei 13, so how then does it have anything to do with the 2nd Division? Well, traditionally, historically, the director of the Onmitsukido, the corps commander, has always been a member, the current head of the Shihoin noble family. And of course, the most recent person to head the family that was also the corps commander of the Onmitsukido was the famous Yoruichi Shihoin, one of the most popular characters in the series. As the 22nd head of the Shihoin family, and also, as I mentioned, the corps commander of the Onmitsukido, the first woman to do so, she was in charge of that stealth force, who meted out punishments for criminals within the Soul Society. But Yoruichi also became the captain of the 2nd Division around the same time during her tenure as head of the Shihoin family. And this put her in a unique position to marry these normally quite disparate factions. And so under Yoruichi, the 2nd Division and the Onmitsukido became intimately linked, entwined within one another. And we see this kind of take root when she actively puts the top 5 seated members of the 2nd Division into management positions of the 5 different branches of the covert ops. We see that the captain of the 2nd Division becomes the head of the executive militia, the vice captain becomes the head of the patrol unit, and the 3rd seat is in charge of detention. So, to put it very simply, the 2 factions, the 2nd Division and the Onnitsukido, were originally separate, and the Onnitsukido wasn't even a part of the Gotei 13, kind of operating secretly in the shadows instead. However, when Yoruichi was the head of the stealth force, she also became captain of the 2nd Division and married the 2 together. And we kind of see that the ethics and ideals of the Onnitsukido have bled into that of the 2nd Division. And being a member of the 2nd Division is almost now akin to being a member of this lethal task force. More than anything, it feels like being a member of the 2nd Division, being a member of the Onnitsukido, is to really be an agent of the Shinigami, more so than anyone else. You have to remember, of course, that the Gotei 13 is the military arm of the Soul Society, so every Shinigami here, perhaps with the exception of the 4th Division, although I assume they are still combat trained, is supposed to be a soldier. However, more than any of them, the 2nd Division is a combat-focused, a combat-trained, military-honed division designed to be a group of killers. Obviously, the same can be said about the 11th Division, but the 11th Division is effectively a wild, untamed beast of a division in comparison, where they're not really bound by rules or law or anything like that. They are more a group of criminals and thugs who love to fight for the sheer thrill of fighting. To be a member of the 2nd Division and a member of the Covert Ops is to be willing to throw your life away for the Soul Society. Your life means nothing. It's just there in service of that greater law, the law of the world. And this is really embodied by the 2nd Division's motto, which is simply seek nothing. The credo which Aizen recites to Soi Fon during the Fate Karakura Town battle, which goes something like, do not seek beauty in battle, do not seek virtue in death, don't think of your life as your own. If you desire to protect what must be protected, cut down your foe from behind, is embodied by the 2nd Division more so than any other. Although that credo is for the Soul Society in general to give your life for that which must be protected, this is something that the 2nd Division embodies more than any other. And so honestly, it is really cool to have a division that is basically dedicated to the laws and virtues of Soul Society, where the 1st Division kind of upholds the traditionalist, historical side of Soul Society. The 2nd Division is the dirtier, grittier side, the side that you're not supposed to see, the side that every Shinigami is supposed to kind of adhere to, although many of them won't necessarily be held to that same standard. To be a member of the 2nd Division is to be that blade of the Soul Society, essentially. That's really what the 2nd Division is, having been so intimately connected with the covert ops, this internal police task force. The law of the Soul Society should mean more to you than your own life itself. And as I said, this idea of assassination, this idea of a mastery over death, essentially, this ethic and ideology that comes from the Onnitsukido has bled over to the 2nd Division. We see that with their flower, their insignia, which I believe is pronounced the Pasque flower. I'm not entirely sure on that one. But the Pasque flower is highly toxic, and this kind of toxin is dangerous to humans. And I think that is basically there. It's quite blunt, but I think it's just there to kind of reinforce the assassin nature of this division. The fact that this division is made up of killers who aren't afraid to strike from the shadows, who aren't afraid to stab you in the back if it means protecting what they need to protect. Now, the barracks of the 2nd Division, however, are maybe not quite what you would expect for a division so steadfastly focused on the mission at hand. The barracks are actually quite lavish, quite luxurious, and have been renovated to include automatic doors, heated flooring, and air conditioning. And of course, you can probably imagine where this comes from. This comes from the 2nd Division's Vice Captain, Maurizio Omaeda, who is, of course, obscenely wealthy and has used that to deck out the barracks to his liking. And there's a reason this feels so alien for the 2nd Division. It's because Omaeda feels very alien to the 2nd Division. He kind of goes against so much of what the 2nd Division is all about. The 2nd Division, as we mentioned, is about not taking pride in your own life, not considering your own life to be yours, but to be belonging to the Soul Society. So in many ways, you know, material goods, materialistic viewpoints are not necessary for these people. And yet Omaeda, the 2nd most high-ranking member of this division at the time of the present day, is all about materialism, materialistic goods, money, wealth, power that comes with it. And so he really does kind of stick out like a sore thumb. I think that's nicely reflected in the way the barracks look. Being connected to the stealth force as well means that the 2nd Division also houses the nest of maggots on its division ground, which is a fascinating place that we find out about in Turn Back the Pendulum, where supposed preordained criminals or people of interest, dangerous people, are locked up here even before they've done anything wrong, because the Soul Society and the Central 46 has deigned that they might be dangerous in the future. And I think that's really fascinating as well. This idea that the 2nd Division is completely neutral. Essentially, it doesn't care about anyone or anything, it just does as it's told. It is an arm of the Central 46, first and foremost, more than it is really an ally to anyone else. And I think that's quite a fascinating position for a division to have to uphold. The division's colour is a dark, burnished orange, which here can mean pride and stubbornness, which of course seems to relate directly to Soi Fon herself, but it can also mean deceit and distrust, which might be a reflection of the way the stealth unit so often works from the shadows. And over the years, Soi Fon has tried to teach her seemingly bumbling vice captain what it really means to be a member of the secret remote squad, to the point where she has taught him effectively how to hold himself in battle, even though it's something he doesn't seem to really be able to get a grasp of. But she says, if your ally has gone down, see that as an opportunity to stab your enemy in the back. And if you're incapable of even managing that, then simply let your ally die. That's what it means to be a member of the secret remote squad. And it kind of goes back again to this idea of this expendable squad of killers who do everything they do in the service of Soul Society without considering their own life. Now, despite the foundation of this division being so cool, them having such a unique angle, their role in Bleach is not huge. I would definitely say they are one of the supporting divisions in the series. The 2nd Division itself does have quite far-reaching ramifications for Soul Society as a whole, and we see members of the 2nd Division quite often in terms of members of the Omnitsukido, members of the Raiteitai, who kind of come out and deliver messages to people throughout the Soul Society. These are all people who are part of the stealth force. But the actual 2nd Division itself doesn't really play much more than a supporting role throughout Bleach. But what I do like about the 2nd Division, that tie to the covert ops means that they are a division whose history is really rooted and entrenched in the history of the Gotei 13 and the Soul Society itself. And I really do like that. I think that definitely makes them one of the more interesting, one of the more storied divisions of the lot of them. In a sense, the 2nd Division, as I've mentioned already, does share many similarities to the 1st Division, with Soi Fon herself feeling quite similar in a lot of ways, particularly in her worldview to Yamamoto, but simply part of the younger generation. And much like the 1st Division, in the earlier parts of Bleach, they are very pro-authority, pro the execution of Rukia, pro following the rules, and are very unhappy when those rules are upturned. And throughout the story, Soi Fon is of course flanked by both incompetence in the form of Omaeda and inferiority in the way she feels towards Yoruichi. But actually, like I said, their impact on the story as a whole is not particularly deep. If we move on then to look at the more prominent characters of the 2nd Division, we of course have to start with the earliest known captain of the 2nd Division in the series, being Yoruichi Shihoin, who was captain of this division at least 110 years prior to the start of the story, if not probably a little bit longer than that as well. We know that being the current head of the Shihoin family, she's also the head of the Onnitsukido too. And we get to see her kind of in action in the Turn Back the Pendulum story arc, where she is there. She actually recommends her third seat, Kisuke Urahara, to get a position as the 12th Division's new captain after Kiryo Hikifune is mysteriously promoted. And although our time with Yoruichi as captain of the 2nd Division is unfortunately quite short, she obviously does leave quite an impact. As we get to see her kind of leadership style, we find out a little bit about her history with Soi Fon as well, where she kind of took Soi Fon on as a personal bodyguard back when Soi Fon was a bit younger, and the two of them did so much together to the point where Soi Fon ended up worshipping Yoruichi, while also showing some disdain towards Yoruichi's choice of companions in Kisuke. However, while Yoruichi seemed to be a, noble captain who was dedicated to upholding the values of the Soul Society, she seemingly betrays the Soul Society during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc and vanishes from the Soul Society entirely, which devastates Soi Fon. But of course, we know the truth. We know Yoruichi was helping her friend Urahara, who had been framed by Aizen for the holification experiments that he was working on. But unfortunately for Yoruichi, that truth wouldn't come out for over 100 years, and she would instead spend her time in exile in Karakura Town. Her vice-captain at the time was Omaeda's father, Moreno-shin Omaeda, and we never get to see him during Turn Back the Pendulum, unfortunately. There's one image of him, and it is said that he was supposedly more skilled than Morechio, but unfortunately we really don't have a lot to go off. By far the most prominent member of the 2nd Division that we get to spend time with is the current captain, Soi Fon, who, more than any character before her, embodies what it means to be a member of both this division and the covert ops force of the Gotei. As a member of the lesser noble Fon family, Soi Fon was destined to a life in the Onnitsukido, and she dedicated herself to being the arms and legs of Yoruichi, the core commander, when she was elected to being a part of her personal guard. Soi Fon's family lineage is one of executioners and talented assassins, and her demeanour is exactly what you would expect from someone who has been raised in that environment from a very young age. And so more so than any character, more so than Yoruichi, who seemed quite jovial, quite upbeat, despite being in such a position of power and authority over a talented group of killers, Soi Fon is far more what I would expect from somebody in that position. Her worldview is almost nihilistic in that she doesn't think, her life means anything. She devotes herself and her life entirely to service of the Gotei 13, to the point where, if she dies in battle, if she goes down in battle, she expects Omaeda to either leave her for dead or to use that moment as an opportunity to attack her attacker. 7 years after enlisting in the Onnitsukido, Soi Fon becomes a member of Yoruichi's personal bodyguards, and worships her, models herself on her, changes her hairstyle to look like Yoruichi as much as she possibly can, and dedicates and devotes her life to this person who she sees as almost being godlike. However, Yoruichi's supposed betrayal of the Soul Society obviously crushes and destroys Soi Fon, to the point where she rewrites herself, changes herself, transforms and hardens her heart, and becomes someone who is seemingly completely uncaring, devoid of any kind of empathy, and instead works to be that stone-cold, silent blade of the Soul Society. To this end, in the Soul Society arc, we would see Soi Fon meting out the laws of Soul Society as she saw fit, advocating for the execution of Rukia, expecting the traditions and the authority of Soul Society to be upheld, and being extremely unhappy when it's intervened with. Soi Fon is so ruthless and so narrow-minded in a sense of her worldview of expecting the Shinigami of Soul Society to literally shut up and do exactly as they are told, that she nearly kills Kiyone Kotetsu for simply aiding her captain, who is actually the one who intervenes in the execution. But eventually Soi Fon battles it out with Yoruichi, their first meeting in over a century, where Yoruichi kind of manages to break Soi Fon down, and Soi Fon reveals kind of the true reason for how she has become who she is, where she is just absolutely devastated that Yoruichi left her behind all those years ago. A nice little detail during this battle as well is that Soi Fon summons members of the Onmitsukido as well to help her out in the fight by placing her sword down on the ground. All of these masked men arrive to do battle with Yoruichi. It's a really cool moment now. These guys get absolutely annihilated, but it's a nice show of force for the leader of the stealth force nonetheless. The 2nd Division then basically isn't seen again outside of Turn Back the Pendulum until the Fake Karakura Town arc, where Soi Fon and Omaeda converge on the battlefield alongside everybody else. The two of them take on the 2nd Espada Baragon Louisenbahn along with some of his faction Gio Vega and Nerj Parduok, where Omaeda is briefly successful against Nerj and Soi Fon feigns being defeated by Gio to try and learn his powers before defeating him with an actual assassination, showing him exactly what the stealth force is capable of. And it's a really cool moment for her character and for the 2nd Division as a whole to see her using everything she has learned and actually getting to see a proper assassination take place. But Soi Fon and Omaeda continue in this fight, eventually taking down Baragon with the help of Hachigen before being defeated by Aizen, although Omaeda himself is nowhere to be seen after the Baragon fight. And then later in the Lost Agent arc, at the behest of Yamamoto himself, Soi Fon would break Soul Society law to help Ichigo restore his Shinigami powers. And this is of course a massive turning point for every Shinigami who was fully focused on the authority of Soul Society up until that point. Then in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, the 2nd Division barracks come under attack by Sternritter K, BG9 during the initial invasion of the Quincy, and Soi Fon very quickly has her Bankai stolen from her. She then tries to train up her Shunko to complete it during the time she no longer has a Bankai, and she's able to use her Shunko, Mukyu Shunko, in battle against BG9 when the 2nd invasion comes around. A little bit later on in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, although Soi Fon is shown to have slightly mellowed out somewhat, as Rukia says, she still shows that display of disgust when someone breaks the rules, seemingly so brazenly. When Shunsui reveals that he has freed Aizen to help them out, Soi Fon calls him out and even asks if he has no shame at all, despite him being the captain commander. And Soi Fon in general in the 1000-Year Blood War arc is very argumentative, kind of turning against the Vizards in the wake of Yamamoto's death, questioning if they ever had any loyalty to him at all, saying that they didn't like him so they must be happy he's dead, and even having a go at the 0 Division too when they turn up, questioning why they weren't there to help them fend off against the Quincy. Such emotional outbursts for Soi Fon are a little bit strange to see when she's supposed to be so stoic, she's supposed to be almost robotic in her ability to serve the Soul Society, but I honestly think that these outbursts kind of help to flesh her out a little bit as well. Unfortunately for Soi Fon, although she travels to Varvelt to the final battle stage, she's not seen again after the actual battles begin. And then she and Omaeda are seen in the final couple of chapters and the Hell chapter as well, where the present day version of the 2nd Division is, as I said at the start of this video, mostly exactly the same as it was at the beginning. The relationship between Soi Fon and Omaeda has softened somewhat, although Kubo loves to use the caricature joke of her punching him in the face or just smacking him anywhere really. Even if he hasn't really done anything wrong, that's what their relationship has effectively been distilled down to. And speaking of Omaeda, much like Soi Fon, he is the vice captain we easily spend the most time with as far as the 2nd Division is concerned, and the moment he is introduced, we really see the opposing dichotomy between him and his captain. Unlike a lot of divisions where the captain and the vice captain tend to sort of work in some kind of unison, some kind of harmony, maybe not all the time, but Soi Fon and Omaeda are completely diametrically opposed. So as I mentioned before, Soi Fon is dedicated to the cause. All she has ever known is a life within the service of the stealth force as an assassin, brought up basically from being a little child, almost a child soldier, to knowing great betrayal and the heartache that comes with that. Omaeda is uncaring, selfish, aloof, doesn't seem to care at all about what it means to be a Shinigami, and instead spends his days stuffing his face and showing off his wealth. And Omaeda is quickly shown to be at least somewhat incompetent as he is immediately defeated by Ichigo. But at the same time, when it comes round to the fake Karakura Town arc, Kubo decides to give him a little bit of fleshing out and actually shows that maybe Omaeda does have some idea of what it means to be a part of this division, as when he gets the upper hand on Baragon's faction Nerge, we get to see that Omaeda shows definitely a level of pride in being a part of the stealth force, in being the leader of the patrol unit, how he's not as slow as someone might think he is, and being a member of the stealth squad, he has to be quick. And it's kind of interesting to see that, and it is interesting to see Omaeda grow into someone who is actively, trying to work with and help out his character more, his captain, more and more as time goes on, but she's obviously not used to receiving that, or even needing it, having grown up in such a lifestyle where people aren't supposed to help one another. You're supposed to use any advantage you can get. And while I wouldn't necessarily say Omaeda succeeds in changing his captain, it is nice seeing the two highest ranking members of the second division working well together as the series progresses, watching him steady Soi Fon, actually holding her nearly unconscious body as she manages to ready her Bankai to fire at BG9 in the second invasion. And they have actually had a degree of development as a team, as a duo, since even the Urahara arc where Soi Fon told him to release her because even the feel of him disgusts her, to the point where she is near death and basically trusting Omaeda to help her defeat this enemy. So that's a nice bit of growth for these members of the second division. But unfortunately for Omaeda, he also arrives in Varvelt and completely vanishes from the final battle. Presumably he is sniped by Lil Barrow, but it's hard to say without knowing for sure. And then the only other character we know about in the second division at any point in time is the third seat 110 years ago, Kisuke Urahara. And it makes a lot of sense that he would be a part of the second division. As we have said a lot of times about this character on this channel, he is a big picture, status quo kind of guy who does everything for the sake of the Soul Society. And that makes a lot of sense. That's basically the entire creed of the second division. That's what these people live by, and it seems like that ideology has always stuck with Kisuke, even after leaving for the slightly more eccentric 12th division, where he probably does suit that better. The side of the second division that is ruthless, that puts the Soul Society before even your life and the lives of your allies, has seemingly stuck with him ever since. But that's it for our exhaustive breakdown of the second division, their overview, their role in the story, and their most prominent characters, and their role in the story as well. As I mentioned before, these videos are just a way of kind of comprehensively rounding up everything about each individual division. It's the character analysis videos where we can really take each of these individual figureheads and dive deep into their stories and what makes them tick. But I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments below what you like about the second division. Do you enjoy the second division as a member of the Gotei 13? Who's your favourite member of the second division? And even, what's your favourite second division moment in the series? Next month, we'll be taking a look at the melancholy third division, a division of despair, which I think is going to be a really interesting and fun one. But until next time, guys, make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll catch you later. I'll see you then.